Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levi.
Greetings, super friends, and welcome to a very special bonus episode of the Superhuman Academy podcast. Now, why is it a bonus episode? Well, as you will notice, this is our second episode that we're publishing today, and we've never done that before. We've never done a bonus episode. So why would we do it today? Well, it is not every day that I publish a new book. But today I have published a new book. It is called The Only Skill That Matters. And in this special bonus episode, I would like to read you a couple of chapters. Now, let me give you a little bit of backstory on this book. About 8 or 9 months ago, I flew to Austin, Texas to work with Tucker Max and his team to learn how to write an incredible book. I had written books before, but they were really text-based versions of online courses, and I wanted to learn how to write a best-selling book. I wanted to work with his publishing team and his creative team and really put out a book that I could be very proud of, to send to friends, to send to family, to send to clients, and everything in between. And I have to say that the book that came out, I am beyond proud of. This is the first time that I'm sharing a lot of the techniques that I have developed over the years, and it is the first time that I'm sharing a lot of the story that goes along with the techniques and goes along with my journey. It's a very, very personal tale and a very personal book, which at the same time manages to teach so many of the things that we've taught in a fun way and in a quick way. It's only about 180 pages. Anyone can read it, and you can learn and implement the techniques that we teach in our $300 and $400 courses. So I'm really excited about this book, and with your permission, I would love to read you just a couple chapters. Now, I'm going eventually to do an audiobook, but as of right now, you guys are getting the very, very first peek into my new book, The Only Skill That Matters. And by the way, if you want to pick up your very own copy, you can do so. It is literally right now going on sale as you hear this. All you have to do is go to superhumanacademy.com/book, or in your podcast player, just click on this episode and the link to the blog post for this episode will actually take you to where you can pick up your very own copy of this book. I greatly appreciate it, and I greatly, greatly appreciate if you can leave me an awesome review if you enjoy the book. I cannot tell you how important that is, how much of a difference it makes. So, without any further ado, my new book, The Only Skill That Matters. Dedication. To the 200,000 plus super learners out there in the world, thank you for giving my life purpose. Introduction. Why are you reading that? The principal asked. Silent, sustained reading. 8th grade. Of all of the students in all the classes, this evil bastard had pulled up a chair behind me. By now, I was used to interrogations anytime something went wrong on campus, and even to the occasional teacher reminding me of my very limited potential. But this time, even I was surprised. I looked up from my Java 2 textbook, which I understood almost nothing of, and sheepishly replied, "I want to learn how to program computers." What followed took every ounce of the disdain that comes from decades of reprimanding problem children in a British boarding school. He scoffed. If you've picked up this book, chances are you know what it feels like to wish you could learn faster. You've spent the late hours studying, trying to keep up with your peers, your industry, or your passions. You faced the exam you thought would kill you, struggled to transition between industries, or even missed that big promotion. But even if you have kept up, no matter. You no doubt can feel the pace of information and change constantly creeping up around you, slowly drowning you as you attempt to tread water. And deep down, you know the unspoken rule of the game we're all playing. In our information economy, if you can't learn quickly and effectively, you are going to get left behind. In the next decade, this trend is only going to accelerate as we transition into a society of nearly 100% knowledge workers. And in that time, every single knowledge worker in the world is going to have one of two conversations. In the first, your employer will thank you for your service and tell you that it's no longer needed. Your job has been outsourced, eliminated, or automated. Best of luck. In the second conversation, they'll use phrases like irreplaceable, leading expert, and invaluable asset. Then, they'll ask you what it would take to keep you around. Which conversation do you want to have? Fortunately, there is a better way to learn. A way that harnesses your brain's innate abilities to make learning both easy and fun. A method that makes new information as memorable as your most cherished memories. That allows you to accumulate knowledge faster than you ever thought possible. This method is based on proven neuroscientific principles and has been developed and refined for over 2,500 years. Once you know it, you'll be able to learn anything you desire, from industry trends to foreign languages, in a fraction of the time. In this book, you are going to learn the techniques that comprise this method in an easy, entertaining, and step-by-step way. You will learn to use the evolutionary strengths of the human brain to create and retain strong, linked memories. You'll learn to maintain those memories effectively over time. Plus, you'll learn strategies for reading faster, optimizing learning, and maintaining peak brain health. Over the last 5 years, I've taught this superlearner methodology to over 200,000 students and readers in 205 countries and territories. Those students have gone on to pass every exam imaginable, from the bar exam to technical certifications to the MCAT. They've used these techniques to change careers, start businesses, learn languages, and master musical instruments. And while some subjects do lend themselves more to these techniques than others, we've yet to find a topic that can't be learned easier using them. Are you ready to claim your birthright and become a superlearner? Keep reading. Chapter 1: Information Overload and the Explosion of Knowledge. Unless you've missed the last couple decades, you know what information overload feels like. Every year, there are 600,000 to 1 million new books published in English alone, not to mention the millions of books published in other languages. And that's just books. More and more, as a society, we are consuming our information from an ever-growing flood of newer mediums. These range from the traditional media like magazines, television, and newspapers to the more modern blog posts, podcasts, audiobooks, and videos. In short, we are producing and consuming more information than ever before. Not long ago, books were a precious commodity. People were lucky to own 1 or 2 books, and they read those books over and over again, savoring each page. In 1731, when Benjamin Franklin established the first subscription library, he pulled all kinds of strings to amass just 45 books. Today, around 250 years later, the Library of Congress holds over 39 million books. And again, let me remind you, that's just books. Every weekday, the library receives about 15,000 items, adding about 12,000 of them to the archives. For the most part, this is a very good thing. Throughout human history, progress has been loosely correlated to how easy it is for the average person to create and access knowledge. In this light, we might look at a few key events throughout history as major turning points in our development. The foundation of our world, then, started with the invention of writing around 5,000 years ago. Sure, we take it for granted today, but writing is what allowed us to asynchronously record and deliver information and knowledge from one person to another. No longer did we have to transmit information from person to person orally. More importantly, we no longer had to rely on our imperfect memories to store that information. This might not sound like a big deal, but it is. After all, every great empire is built on technology. For the British, that technology was ships. For the Romans, it was roads and metallurgy. But thousands of years before that, it was writing and accounting that helped the Sumerians build the first massive kingdoms. Of course, even then, new information technology was not without its critics. Socrates, a proponent of memorization and oral education, often spoke against the use of writing, claiming it, quote, weakens the memory and softens the mind, end quote. Imagine that. I guess every generation has their own version of that thing is turning your brain to mush. Controversial or not, the creation of writing was a massive technological breakthrough. It empowered us to disseminate important texts, mostly religious ones, mind you, to millions and millions of people. This enabled mass education and mass collaboration on a scale never before seen in human history. Pretty great if you stop and think about it. In the 1440s, Gutenberg's commercial printing press took this a step further. While printing presses had existed in Asia for hundreds of years, none of them were as practical or as scalable. Gutenberg's design, once perfected, enabled printers to easily reproduce and distribute many copies of books. This, in turn, made it much faster and easier to spread thoughts and ideas using the printed word. For centuries after this revolutionary invention, the rate of information produced and consumed climbed steadily, and for good reason. Information, and therefore education, became cheaper and more readily available. This meant a more educated public, which in turn meant that more people were able to contribute to the growing body of knowledge. By the time he wrote Part 3 of his autobiography in 1788, Benjamin Franklin proudly proclaimed that his public library system had, quote, made the common tradesmen and farmers as intelligent as most gentlemen from other countries. In fact, Franklin himself was a perfect example of the effect a well-educated public can have on the body of human knowledge. Though he was denied a formal education and dropped out of Harvard over ideological differences, his life of autodidactic learning served him very well. In his lifetime, Franklin made significant contributions to the fields of politics, literature, science, governance, and more. And in his roles as both postmaster for the U.S. colonies and one of the most prominent printers and newspaper editors in the New World, he personally presided over this information explosion. The next waves of innovation in information technology were, without a doubt, revolutionary. But despite that, they all had one flaw in common with traditional print publishing. Be it radio, broadcast television, or satellites, the next few waves of technology still had gatekeepers. Besides the occasional community radio or TV show, it was just about impossible for your average person to spread information on a massive scale. This meant that the information shared was, for the most part, carefully curated. All this changed with the advent of the internet. Sure, in the early days, you needed to know a bit about computers and HTML to produce something people could actually read on the internet. But no longer. Today, technological literacy is a given, and all it takes to share information is a couple of clicks. You don't even need to be able to write intelligibly today. You can vlog. This, once again, has resulted in an absolute explosion in the amount of information we as a society produce. I need not scare you with the statistics of how many millions of posts, tweets, videos, and podcasts are shared every day on the internet, because chances are you've felt it. And sure, most of it is, for lack of a better word, noise. But a great deal of it is not. Consider this for a moment. Of all the information you've consumed over the last week, how much of it came from traditional media outlets? You know, names like CNN and the New York Times, NPR, or Random House Publishing. Just 20 years ago, that number would have been 100%. But today, in the era of the Huffington Post, Medium blogs, independent podcasters, and self-made YouTube stars, it's probably less than half. In fact, of the 3 million podcast downloads, tens of thousands of books, and over 200,000 online course enrollments I've delivered over the last 5 years, not one of them came through traditional media outlets. And guess what? More and more of your favorite authors, podcasters, and bloggers are bypassing the gatekeepers and publishing their work directly to you. So, like I said, explosion. This doesn't just have repercussions for casual information like self-help books or interesting business podcasts. This democratization of knowledge creation has played out in more and more fields. At first, the explosion of information started in only the most technical of fields like science and medicine. Think about it. At the turn of the 19th century, a doctor was a doctor, and a veterinarian too if the situation called for it. But then, as the amount we knew about our bodies began to increase, it was no longer possible for one person to maintain a working knowledge of it all. Over time, the medical profession fragmented. Pediatrics, internal medicine, oncology, orthopedics, radiology, psychiatry, and so on. Today, it's even more fragmented. If your child has a tummy ache that just won't go away, today, you'll likely be referred to a pediatric gastroenterologist. Need a nose job? You'll likely see a craniofacial plastic surgeon who does nothing but noses. And heaven forbid you should develop a rare form of bone cancer. You'll need to find a good musculoskeletal oncologist. But this explosion of knowledge hasn't stopped there. Indeed, it has expanded outward. From the sciences and computer programming to history and law and even to soft skills like sales and marketing. Today, the floodgates are wide open and every profession is experiencing the benefits and the detriments. Furthermore, because there are exponentially more of us creating this new knowledge, the pace at which we do so is not linear, but geometric. Just as Moore's law famously stated that computer power would double every 2 years and costs would halve, knowledge grows in a similarly exponential way. 20 years ago, computer science students at Stanford could rest easy knowing that their 4 years of training would prepare them for the job. Today, much of what they'll learn is obsolete even before they graduate. It's clear why. After all, with the insane amounts of knowledge and technology at our fingertips, anyone, anywhere can innovate. A few decades ago, the early programming frameworks like C were developed over the course of years by massive corporations like Bell Labs. Today, someone such as David Heinemeier Hansson can build a framework like Ruby on Rails, which powers many of your favorite websites in his spare time, in about 6 months. One afternoon, during the writing of this book, I broke for lunch on the rooftop patio of my office building in the bustling high-tech hub of Tel Aviv. Once there, I couldn't help but overhear a loud, heated debate between the founders of a cybersecurity startup. From the sound of it, they had discovered the perfect job candidate. She was friendly, she was ambitious, heck, she was almost overqualified for the job. There was only one problem. She wanted to travel for 6 months before starting. The conversation that ensued reads eerily like a marketing campaign for this book. It's a long time, but she's really talented. You're right, she's amazing, but 6 months? Our industry moves at light speed. 6 months is an eternity. Even if she were Steve Jobs, in 6 months of traveling, her skills will be completely irrelevant. You're being a little unreasonable, aren't you? Am I? Did you see that article I sent you about the innovation happening in micropayments right now? In just 3 months, those guys have created a whole new freaking industry. And she wants 6? Something tells me she didn't get the job. Whereas it used to be only doctors and programmers who struggled to keep up with the pace of their field, today it's almost everybody. Marketing managers who aren't caught up on all the latest consumer psychology research, sales professionals who haven't learned the latest features of their software of choice, professionals in every industry who want to take their career to the next level but are struggling to keep up with the work they already have, much less make time for leisure learning like foreign languages, musical instruments, new skills, or pleasure reading. Perhaps you've already felt this overwhelm. Perhaps you're in one of the few professions that hasn't felt it yet. One way or another, let me assure you, it's coming. And until this rapid progress brings us the technology to download information directly into our gray matter, the overwhelm is only getting worse. Fortunately, there's a better way. A way to not only choose the right things to learn, but to absorb them with relative ease and actually remember them. Fortunately, you can become a super learner. All right, super friends, that is chapter 1 of my brand new book, The Only Skill That Matters. To be honest with you, I wanted to read you all chapter 2, but there's a certain part of chapter 2 that I actually can't read without tearing up. So I would much rather have each of you read it on your own. Chapter 2 gets very, very personal. If you want to continue where you left off, you've already consumed chapter 1. All you need to do is visit superhumanacademy.com/book to pick up your copy today. I would really appreciate your support And I would greatly, greatly appreciate if you leave us an awesome review on Amazon or wherever you purchase a copy of the book, because it really, really makes a huge difference to the success of the book and the continued success of this podcast and how we're able to bring you massive guests with incredible value for free every single week. So please take a moment to visit superhumanacademy.com/book to pick up your own copy and pick up where you left off with Chapter 2.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.